Ad Infinitum is the only podcast solely focused on audio ads.
Advertising.
The creatives who make them, and/or the latest thinking that informs them, how the space is evolving, and, my favorite part, a roundup of recent audio ads and analysis by yours truly,
Ad campaign.
Stu Redwine, VP Creative at Oxford Road, and each episode's guest. This is Season 2, Episode 6 of Ad Infinitum, and this episode's title is Audio's Rule of Thirds, discussing how brands can best connect with hosts, what the ingredients of a persuasive host-read ad are, and rating some recent movers and shakers in the podcast space from Magellan.ai's May report. Our guest is Mike Jensen, a pioneer in the podcasting world with his company, Rhapsody Voices. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks so much for having me, Stu.
Thanks for being here. So, as the brains behind Rhapsody Voices, Mike is shaking up how creators and sponsors connect. And he's no rookie. With over 2 decades in digital media, including significant roles at AOL and Stitcher, Mike knows his stuff when it comes to growing audiences and creating profitable content. And Rhapsody Voices was founded by a team of digital natives with deep experience at the top 5 podcasting networks. Mike and his team are building a company to address the challenges facing creators at both the big networks and the all-in-one smaller shops. Monetization is one of the biggest challenges facing creators across all platforms. So they lean in hard on sales and deliver value for both sides of the marketplace, creators and their shows, as well as the brands and agencies on the other side of the table. Mike, in your own words, what sets Rhapsody Voices apart? Like, why Rhapsody Voices?
I think that when you talk about Rhapsody Voices, we really want to deliver on the mission of the connectivity between the host, sponsors, and the audience. So it's that connectivity and understanding each show and the ecosystem and how to have authenticity across those 3 participants is the core to us having success for all 3, right? An enjoyable experience for the audience, a good experience for the creator, and sponsor success.
And is it that you saw forces in the marketplace that were like moving counter to this? Or it's like, how did you see there was white space here?
Well, I can answer this question by dating myself a little bit. Since we had the intro and it's like I've been doing this a long time, you know, it goes back even before specifically audio, which has been my passion for 20 years, where we've tried to make sure at the kind of the foundation, the beginning of the internet, like how do we make great content and sponsors, you know, participate together and make for success, right? I think we've seen that happen online with the evolution of video. And I think in audio, we've seen what is in talk, quite an innovation, right? From what had been sort of traditionally moved into a few select pieces of content in AM radio, right? And now we have this evolution of so much different types of storytelling and comedy and sports. And what we're seeing is, hey, with that kind of evolution, you've really got to evolve in terms of how you're connecting the audience, the host, and the sponsors, right? And so you've got to look at every show and recognize what needs to happen for that connectivity to be in place.
And when you see like programmatic and the other tools that are in place that are like all driving efficiency, you know, what you're talking about kind of very much it lines up with something we talk about at Oxford Road, which is like the intentional inefficiency of audio with the intimacy of audio, that like you're not talking about set it and forget it campaigns here. You're not talking about, hey, I'm just going to make it really easy to just effortlessly buy this ad and plug it in programmatically into a bunch of shows. Like you're talking about a concierge, like high touch approach to this stuff.
And one of our messages of what we're looking to deliver is boutique at scale, meaning that we know we want to deliver to a wide audience a premium experience. But in order to do that effectively, you really want to take into account all the aspects of what boutique at scale means, which is delivering on each of what boutique means. And so I often say to people around Rhapsody, in terms of like what we're going to be able to do, it's like a boutique hotel. You don't need 7 pools and 7 restaurants. You need 1 great restaurant, 1 great bar, 1 great experience. And that's what we're trying to do in each instance with a show and the sponsors and that deliverable to the audience.
That's one of the rule of thirds of audio as we were prepping for this show. That's what kept coming up, is that in the world of audio, as in life, things often come in threes. We've got the pillars of audio production, voiceover, sound design, and music. There's the classic storytelling structure of beginning, middle, and end, what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. And we can't forget the timeless rhetorical appeals from Aristotle's rhetoric of pathos, logos, and ethos. And like you just said, in audio, the host, the audience, and the sponsor, and bringing all of those together. And we continue to see more data and research in the space, like you're talking about, as it's evolved from, talk radio to what it is today. So special shout out here to Olivia Gerving, our junior media analyst at Oxford Road, for recapping the recent Sounds Profitable Ad Nauseum report for 2024 that details some current trends in how audience perceive podcast ads. And I just wanted to talk about a couple with you, Mike. So some key observations from the study: listeners don't find interesting, funny, or novel ads fatiguing. Okay. So, shocker, but if it's interesting, it's funny, it's novel, I'm going to stay tuned in. I know I'm like that, but that's dangerous. Focus group of one. Ad Nauseum study found that as well. They find a lack of variety in form and repetition of the same brand message tiresome. So it's kind of the flip side of that. 41% are tired of hearing generic announcer-read ads, and host-read ads are preferred. And we continue to see that. Host-read ads are preferred, tired of hearing the same old thing over and over. And like it said, 41% are tired of hearing generic announcer-read ads. And what I hear in this is like not putting in the effort, hearing the same message over and over, something that's not funny or interesting or novel. That's what happens a lot of times when people are doing audio at scale. But what you're talking about is boutique at scale. How do we still make it special? And one last little bit from the study is notably, and this is what Tom Webster over at Sounds Profitable pulled out as his main observation, is that listeners expect to hear 3 ads per podcast episode. So another one of audio's rule of thirds. But what I think is interesting about that is we expect to hear those ads, right? Unless you're paying not to, you're expecting to hear 3 ads per podcast. So how do we make them interesting, funny, or novel? Because that's what people want to listen to. So I wanted you to break down your audio trinity for us, like we were talking just before the show. What are the 3 things you emphasize with talent when connecting with brands and to give the best host reads?
I think when we are having a conversation with the creator, which is where it starts, oftentimes they'll say, well, what's most important, right? Like, I'm not from the media side, right? I'm a content creator. And we say what's most important is that authenticity. But from there, we do break it into what I would call 3 different core pillars, right? It's people, process, and product, which fits back into what we talked about as far as boutique at scale and that connectivity with audience, content, host. And so think about the people. You just mentioned something earlier, the host. They've got to have an understanding of what we're looking to do, right? If you try to fake it till you make it, you're not going to have something interesting or novel, right? And so there are a lot of talented content creators who think they'll be able to do that, but their audience came because they believe in the show. And a lot of times they'll read into that. And so if we're talking about people, we need to start with, we need to be prepared, and we're going to help you, right? In terms of that deliverable for the sponsor. And then the other one that's important is the product side. So the product side is important because a lot of times creator will be handed a lot of information regarding that sponsor. And it's important that we take on some ownership at Rhapsody Voices to help with all of that content that's related to that sponsor ask around the uniqueness of the product and the many different types of product or service advantages it has, and help make that more concise for the content creator so that they can deliver on that sponsorship in an effective way that they feel comfortable, right? And that's related to the product, right? And then the third one, you mentioned a little bit about this, but process. When I say you mentioned a little bit about it, I think about what you were saying with sort of like the non-host ad nauseum, what have you. Well, that's related to where the ad placement is, how often it's heard, its length, right? And so when we think about that, we look at each show and go, okay, how is it consumed? Where should we put the ads? Is this content creator tend to be a little bit longer form with the way that they do the read? Or are they very concise with their ad read? And that may play a role in like how we do the ad placement, so that beyond the Tom Webster research that indicates that there's going to be 3 ads and they accept that in the show, right? It's how do we deliver those ads and being effective, understanding that show in placing them in ways where the audience is finding it comfortable and acceptable and maybe even welcoming, right? And to add to that, I think when you have a creator that kind of understands the process, what's happening, they'll be quick to remind their audience that those sponsors are helping support the show, which is really powerful, right? And so that's the threes that we go through when we look at how to make the best sponsorships happen for a show.
And seeing this come to life with like some of your shows, like the Jim Cornette Experience, I know his air checks are off the map on the stuff he does creatively and how long he'll go. I mean, that's where I see all of this, you know, coming together. I mean, what's that like working with him and unlocking that magic?
I think it starts with the people. And when you think about the hosts of the Jim Cornette show, Jim and Brian, they make sure to save every sponsorship read they do because they look at all of it as branded content. So for them, they're looking at each sponsor being an extension of what they do for the show. And so in those cases, the customization comes in, right? We don't run those sponsor ads back to back like we do in some other shows because of the way that they execute those reads. Whereas if all of a sudden they came to me and said, we're going to do a narrative podcast where it's going to be storytelling, we might make an adjustment and say, well, we don't want as many ads breaks in that kind of show. So we would change it. But Jim and Brian aren't going to be doing a true crime podcast coming up. What they do is fantastic, engaging, and they extend it over to the sponsorship reads. And so what we allow them to do is make sure that they have space for each ad position to go deep with that sponsor because the audience lives it and loves it, right? And it's magic, as you said, but we need to conform to how that magic happens.
Well, and I like that you're intentionally making the space for it. Like you're talking about with the people, the product, and the process piece. What I mean is that in the early days of podcasting, and I've talked about this before, it felt like and can still kind of feel like a lottery ticket. Winner. Where it's like, oh yeah, the CPM is X and it's going to be a host-read ad depending on the host of the show. But just sort of in general, there'd be this underlying thought of like, they might go long. He or she might sing a song or magic could happen as opposed to going, hey, we know this talent delivers magic, so we're going to thoughtfully and intentionally structure this deal in such a way that that is exactly what's going to be delivered as opposed to put your money in the machine, pull the lever, and maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't happen.
Well, is this a portion of the show where we can do spoiler alert? Because we had this conversation about what is possible and how we might innovate further. And I think the lottery ticket, maybe we make that more of a deliverable that is purchased rather than the luck of the draw. And I think it's a great idea to look at that. Now, in the case of like a Jim Cornette show, I don't think you undo those longer ad reads for it. What you do is you say, hey, we want to do more customization. And so we've had the dialogue, not necessarily to shorten their reads, but to bring a sponsorship into a tentpole activity that's happening in wrestling culture and make that a deliverable with like a bit more power of how the sponsor is integrated into those key segments and happenings that are going on. And so we're working on that now. Whereas I think for some other shows, there should be a longer read opportunity, right? And then we can rework the ad structure around that longer read. So, you know, maybe if I had done this show earlier, Rhapsody Voices would be making more money. But maybe we just start from here, Stu, and we give you credit.
Hey, I think that sounds great. As I often say, it's the teamwork that makes the dream work. And I want to see podcasts continue to evolve and like it doesn't have to turn into a whole bunch of breaks that are chock full of a bunch of dynamically inserted. Not that like dynamically inserted or programmatic, like the technology is never the thing. Just like, let's just talk about the end listening experience. Podcast does not. On-demand audio does not have to become what broadcast audio became. Like it does not.
Right.
Full stop. But it could.
It could. I think we are hearing in the marketplace that it's less accepted by the audience. I think that, you know, you can't have necessarily the same ad load you have in broadcast radio, which has the power of people kind of popping in and out. And that's not against broadcast radio because they provide a structure where you can pop in and out for 5 or 10 minutes. And I would argue that for a lot of podcasts, you can't easily do that, right? But I think we've got to be respectful of what podcast leans into, which is like a heavy engagement with that listener. And you can't have as many ad reads as you do in broadcast radio. I think the other element here around the sponsor and podcasting is one in which you think about how do you best deliver in both a host and a non-host, because this session isn't to be like host, read, or nothing, right? It's, hey, I think that there are non-host reads that can be impactful. We know, I was listening to your show earlier with another guest, right? And talking about how a familiar voice becomes a welcome voice, right? And I know that from Spotify, right? My DJ X is always in my ear and I'm kind of used to him now. At first, I didn't know if I liked him. Now, I'm okay with him, right? He's kind of warm and fuzzy, but there's some limitations there, right? Now, if DJ X comes on and reads the State Farm ad 4 times in a row, I don't want to hear that, right? And so we've got some issues around frequency capping or where those ads are placed, how many are in a row, and those are things that are really hurting more programmatic non-host, I think. And I think that, frankly, the host read does guarantee you a better experience in most cases. And Rhapsody Voices needs to deliver on that. We're providing a premium experience for sponsors. They're paying a premium rate, usually, for host reads. And we need to deliver on that.
And all the research shows that it does deliver better than the non-host read. And I think there's a huge it depends piece of this. Having done this, been at Oxford Road since before the beginning and been doing this now over a decade, it's like what I think of more than anything is we have to back up and look at our business goals and our communication goals and then go, where am I trying to hit people in the funnel, upper funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel? What kind of mousetrap am I designing? Or if those kind of mechanical predatory metaphors don't work, what kind of relationship am I trying to build with the listener or the consumer? Whatever it is, first principles, then from there you can determine how best to execute. And if you're new to audio and you're trying to get a lot of bottom funnel action, well, if you're in a lean in medium, having the host give a full-throated personal first-person endorsement makes a ton of sense. Now, if you're in a different state as an advertiser and you're trying to do stuff that's more top funnel or mid funnel, maybe you do shorter units that are produced and you're just trying to remind people. Sometimes I think people will go down to a 30 produced, and is a 30 produced you got to really think about and maybe do some testing on. You might be better served doing a 15. If all you're really trying to do is remind, then why spend 30 seconds reminding when you could spend 15? Or on Sirius XM, for instance, we've done these 6-second bumpers, different things like that. There's lots of different mechanics and tactical approaches to how you want to show up in audio. The question is how am I measuring success? How long do I have to get there? And then that can help me decide on what the best approach is. And it by no means is one size fits all. And simultaneous to that, there is something that's just incredibly persuasive, and the data and the science and the research backs it up, in that voice that's in people's ears that they trust and listen to for hours a day, telling them, I use this and you should too.
Yeah, I think one of the things you hit on is when in terms of the deliverable, what is the deliverable, right? In podcasting, we have a lot of, what I would call challenger brands coming into that space, right? Where this is something that maybe hasn't been offered to the consumer in the same way before. And that takes a deeper education, right? And so that's where host reads can be really powerful, right? With that personal experience that the host is sharing, longer form, a deeper touch in terms of the product description. I think that's really powerful. Now, if you're talking about maybe something like a upcoming movie or show, I can see where maybe if you're running for an upcoming movie or show that's a comedy, in comedy podcasts, that feels like an easier lift, right? It's okay, I might be able to do a shorter format, like a 30, or maybe I don't need a host read, right? I just need to align with audiences that obviously love this type of content. We do that all the time in cross-marketing campaigns. We have a lot of success with, essentially usually 30-second pre or mid tune-in campaigns to help promote our shows on other networks, right? Because we're mapping to where those audiences are audiences, right? And educating them on tuning into the show. So it depends on what that deliverable is, right? I mean, I'll even go deeper on that in my own opinion. I was explaining something the other day around Starbucks. I can understand why Starbucks wouldn't necessarily feel like they need host read endorsements for the latte that I've gotten occasionally at Starbucks for years. But if they have new products, new services, new food items, right? Or seasonal items, I could see where a host read deeper dive into that product or service that's less familiar for someone who's been in Starbucks before is far more of an opportunity, right? And probably a better experience.
Completely. I mean, I know for me, I was just at Starbucks the other day and they have these new summer drinks that are colorful and look appealing to me. I'm I feel like I'm standing at the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
But I also have I'm a creature of habit, man. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I would like that or not. And it's like, is that even caffeinated? I'm not even sure. So it's like, yeah, that's a great example of they've got new menu items, have the hosts talk about those menu items to try to get people to try out that new thing, because it was delicious and I loved it. And you better believe that if there was a host that I listened to all the time that said like, yeah, Starbucks has got these new summer drinks and I just tried it out, that's going to stick for sure. And thinking of working directly with the host to bring it like really down to the, the street level, to make it really practical for the CAOs listening, just with some simple steps that they can take right away with their copy that they're putting before hosts. Can you take me through how you boil down copy for hosts into a list of, surprise, surprise, 3 things?
So I think that we want to make sure that authenticity is the key, right? So in order to have that, you've got to simplify things a little bit. So what is the thing that calls the attention of that host where they're like, oh, well, I didn't know, for example, as a host, if they were doing Starbucks, right? Oh, I don't drink caffeine. Well, what about all these new drinks? Like, let's focus on that one experience you had and why you liked it. Right? There are 20 different value propositions for Starbucks. We're identifying this one for you for this host read. And that'll give you the freedom to really express what you liked about it with authenticity, right? And simplify that related to the product. Then there's some key process elements that they need to touch on. There's going to be, as we know on the media side, an important call to action. They can't miss this. You would think, okay, well, people know that, but you've got to highlight it, right? And I would say the pros, especially, folks have been doing this for a long time as leaders like Oxford Road and your agency, to call those out in the copy. But it's really important to double check the copy, make sure the host has everything together around the copy and the key points for that call to action, including any coupon codes or special offers, and that they get that right. Because no matter how good that read is, you've got to have those process elements down, right?
The way I'm hearing that is the 3 things are simplify, find the personal tie-in with the host, and make sure you've got the call to action. Like if you're gonna just boil it down to make it really easy.
Exactly. And it seems simple, and this is not a knock on our many sponsors, brands, and services, but their jobs are designed for them to find all the different value propositions of their product or service. And that oftentimes ends in 5 or 6 pages of copy. And that's too much for the host. And it's not that they didn't do their job, because they're like, hey, well, there's a million things we do, right, for our consumer. But the host doesn't work there.
And to your point, like a highlight of my career is working with Boll & Branch Sheets when they came into audio. It's teamwork that makes the dream work. A couple of things that we identified with that team over there and our team was, these sheets get softer and softer over time. They're sheets used by 3 U.S. presidents. And we really boiled the copy down, really, concisely followed these things. The personal tie-in bit, I can remember a read with Rush Limbaugh where he talked about the feeling of, like the way the ad started was, he's like, at the end of the long day, you take a shower, and you slide into a crisp, clean set of Boll & Branch sheets. There's nothing like that feeling. And it's like, he came up with that, man. To me, that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. Like if you could get that for every product, it wasn't the copy, it was his experience. And did we have those other points? Loved by 3 U.S. presidents, softer. Yes. Did we have a clear call to action with a great discount? Absolutely. That personal tie-in though, of that theater of the mind, of that experience, and like kind of even feeling it yourself of like, clean set of sheets, end of a long day, put in a hard day's work, took a shower, climb in. There's nothing like that feeling. If you haven't felt this for yourself, you got to get a set of these sheets. That's the kind of moments you're talking about.
Yeah. And I would argue like there's a point of authenticity in there. Like Rush Limbaugh, how many hours, how many days in a row being on the air every day? Like there's authenticity in him talking about, wow, the day is over and a nice pair of sheets, get some freaking rest. I got to do this again tomorrow. It's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. That's an example of what you're talking about. So keep it simple, find that personal tie-in, get your call to action. Okay, so now we're going to get into grading some ads. We've got 4 advertisers from Magellan's May 2024 rankings. So each month, Magellan AI analyzes the trailing month's data to uncover the top podcast advertisers by spend and change in spend. And we're going to be listening to spots from the top 4 movers and shakers. So these are advertisers whose spending increased from April 2024 to May 2024. And those 4 advertisers are MeUndies, Rakuten, IBM and Monday.com. And by the numbers, MeUndies went from $106,000 in April to $750,000 in May. Rakuten went from $150,000 in April to $742,000 in May. IBM went from $41,000 in April to $550,000 in May. And Monday.com went from $20,000 in April to just over $500,000 in May. So just to get an idea of their level of spend and how they're showing up in audio. So let's take a listen. You ready to jump in?
All right, jumping in with Magellan. I'm a longtime client of Magellan, so appreciate what they do.
Here we go.
This summer, you got to equip yourself with the proper underwear if you're going to be walking around, doing your thing. And look, like, think about a day party. You're out there, you're sweating. You need to have good underwear on, man. 100%. Nothing's going to ruin your day like feeling discomfort in that area of your body. You need to be equipped. You need to feel cool. You need to feel comfortable. You need to feel agile. You need to feel mobile. You need to be able to do all of that while wearing the same pair of underwear. And that's why MeUndies has got you covered.
I don't know if anyone else can cover you like that. It's like an insurance policy on having a great day.
Dude, 100%. And the anti-odor is a nice thing to know about. You don't have to worry that you're going to start stinking a little bit up during the day. It's really gross. And plus, it's great for like walking around, man. I do a ton of walking, and if you don't have the right underwear on, it's easy to get some chafage going, easy to get some discomfort. But when you got MeUndies, you're good. And I also love to play sports wearing my MeUndies.
Yeah.
They're good for everything. I personally enjoy the classic black boxer brief situation. It has good length on the leg. It's just a very comfortable, cool, solid style. But they have pretty much every style of underwear that you could ever want or imagine.
There's over 100 different colors and textures to choose from. So you can wear a different pair of underwear every single day, be the most unique and creative person in the bedroom, or you could be a psychopath and just have 100 pairs of black underwear. It doesn't matter. There's plenty of variety. You get to be who you want to be, and you don't have to worry about anything else when you're wearing your MeUndies.
Summer is coming. Get every cut for your butt from MeUndies. Get 20% off your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/OopsPodcast. That's MeUndies.com/OopsPodcast for 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in.
All right, that was MeUndies on the Oops podcast. What do you give it on a scale of 1 to 10? Break it down for us.
Well, first of all, very impressive ad read for me. I thought the points of distinction around the brand were very relatable and easy to understand. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable in their underwear. Everybody wants choice. And I've actually had this as a client and didn't know about the anti-odor. So 3 different key points that stood out to me about the benefits to the brand delivered with authenticity, really strongly.
Agreed. And from an audiolytics standpoint, which is the framework that we use for scanning for and designing a message for optimum persuasion, that's composed of 71 subcomponents of present or not present. Look, it came in at an 83%, and our target's a 90. And the thing to always keep in mind with audiolytics is that like 90 is like perfection. So, because there's theoretically things you could continue. It's almost like 100% the speed of light.
Don't trap yourselves in. I'm going to make a jump to light speed.
So it's like getting to that is like, forget it. So 90 is choice. And we see improvement right in this arc of like 89, 90, 91, 92, like right in there. We see a lot of massive improvement in performance, but 83%, the point is that's super solid. When I get a read like this and like technically from a message structure standpoint, like it's got an 83, there's some additional things it could do. For instance, have specific like scientific substantiation, like facts and figures. Okay, it didn't have that. I feel a little bit like, if I'm being honest about, you know, the application of audiolytics, it's like, yeah, I mean, technically adding that in is going to move the score up. Does it absolutely need it? These guys are doing a really good job. Like, that's a long read. They're given a personal account. Could you switch out, you know, the things that draw my attention are like a cut for every butt. And then they had some other tagline-y thing they said at the end that I can't remember. And so a cut for every butt, that's 5 words. And then like, let's say that other tagline was 4 or 5 words. So now you're getting up to 7 to 10 words that audiolytics is going ding, 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 ding. Hey, you're missing facts and figures. If I traded those 7 to 10 words out for something like, you know, 4 times the stretch of competing brands or 6 times softer than cotton underwear, whatever it is that a worthwhile trade? That's where the audiolytics system to me has great value, because otherwise you may not see that.
Right.
You might lose it because of what you're saying. It's such a strong strong read. So it's hard to like look for improvement, but there is an opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, like I felt like it's a really strong read, but our jobs are to evaluate every aspect of it. They did a great job of executing on the value proposition of the comfort and not wanting to be uncomfortable. And then they kind of went back to that later with you don't want to be walking around uncomfortable. Whereas that was a bit repetitive. They kind of covered that. Whereas the other elements that they could have touched on, to your point, could have been fit into that segment, right? But I mean, we're really splitting hairs now.
We are. It feels appropriate with the Olympics coming up because we're about to all be watching like people at the very peak of their game and then having people on the sidelines critiquing like they just did the most majestic thing in the world. They're like, yeah, they could have done that better.
Yeah, we're just going to do that in media. Like when you watch an NBA game, it's like, why didn't he dunk that? It's like, did you ever?
Exactly. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it? No, Audiolytics gave it an 83. Perfect score is 90 basically in Audiolytics. What would you give that one?
Well, 1 out of 10. I'm going to go 9.
All right, perfect. I love it. The game is afoot, and I love this game. Okay, here we go. The next one is Rakuten from Behind the Velvet Rope.
Do you know that Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop? Because Rakuten members get cash back at over 3,500 stores across every category. I just got all my clothes for this summer. I went to Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Bloomingdale's, all through Rakuten. That's right, I went to the Rakuten website, which took me to each of those stores, and now I'm getting cash back just for buying clothes that I would have bought anyway. I'm set for the summer. You can shop amongst any category: fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, even dining. It's really simple. Your favorite stores pay Rakuten a commission for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the commission with its members. That's you. The cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or they can send you a check. The choice is yours. So get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cashback really adds up.
Okay, lay it on me.
Okay. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I assume that 5 would be hopelessly average. And that's where I'm going to put this. But I will with the caveat of why it's what I would consider probably lower than what the sponsor would want to hear, which is the ad read was executed, I guess, well from a standpoint of the communication, but he just got all his clothes for summer and we had no personal experience. We understand that you can go to the website. That was a very good value proposition, and then connect out to all these different places that you shop. But there's a part of me that doesn't believe you because you didn't have one experience of all the shopping that you said you did that you really stood out. And for me, I couldn't get past that.
Exactly. I think you're spot on. With Audiolytics, it came in at a 65%, and Audiolytics primarily is structural. You know, it's observational. It's based on these weighted elements, 71 different subcomponents that is that thing present or not present. The weighting's based on performance. That adds up to your total score. So there was words said, you know, there was stuff there, kind of like you're saying, like, you know, five's not a 1, but it's missing, like you're saying, substantiation of exactly what's going on there, related to also how it works. Like, it got part of the way there on how it worked, but not completely, and definitely not in a simple way. And there's no positioning. It's not positioned against other alternatives of how one could do this, where there could be an awesome opportunity for positioning here. Because just imagine going to 10 different sites or whatever it is. No, you can go to Rakuten and save all this time, save money. There's just specifics there that were missing from it that ultimately brought the score down to just, you know, like you said, we got an average ad here. So let's see if the next group does better and is able to raise the bar. And the next ad that we are going to listen to is from IBM, International Business Machines.
All right, shifting gears here a little bit.
Just a tad.
What if AI could help your business deliver mission-critical outcomes with speed? With IBM Consulting, your business can design, build, and scale trusted AI using Watson X, and modernize the way you work to accelerate real impact. Let's create AI that transforms your business. Learn more at ibm.com/consulting. IBM. Let's create.
What do you think of that ad from IBM, Mike Jensen?
Well, I would start by saying that I think services like this are a harder lift. So, we just talked about like what is maybe a more fun product or service in MeUndies. I don't know if I've ever referred to underwear as a fun product or service. So I guess maybe I'm standing alone up here. But related to this IBM ad, I like the call to action, simple for going to IBM/consulting to learn more about what for many, including myself, is like a need of education around AI. But AI is such a evolving topic at the water cooler, at home. Everyone's talking about it. I don't know why this is so generic in its approach when you could create maybe more excitement around being able to learn more at IBM/consulting. And so it feels like a missed opportunity.
It does to me as well. What would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm going to give it a 6.
So it's a little better than Rakuten.
Well, I think it's a harder lift, honestly. That Rakuten was something that I thought the sponsor copy opportunity was pretty tremendous to be able to go to this website and then pull out, the value of that right away. I don't know if you could do that as an IBM copywriter to say exactly what you're going to get, but there's just an opportunity to just create something here that's missed.
I think you're right. The research shows that as well, particularly in B2B. And I mean, in all advertising of like making emotional connections, how valuable that is and being distinct. And to your point, like it felt like an ad to me before I get to the Audiolytics score of like, I feel like I can feel the brief for this ad and that like, oh yeah, we're making this for engineers that like we used the qualified language that they use to talk about this kind of stuff and put in music that's not going to bother anybody, that feels kind of, pleasant. And we'll be able to just kind of count it as an impression of like whoever this CTO is, I'm imagining is the target audience, is getting one more sort of very mild nudge in the direction of IBM, But I think that thinking can be misguided. Did they hear IBM and did they think AI and all of that? Yeah, probably. But man, did it move them at all or was it distinct at all? No. I don't want to call it lazy necessarily, but you know what I'm trying to say?
I want to touch on something that you mentioned in terms of like the background music, the score. Right? Like, so we are producing a select group of shows at Rhapsody Voices. And even when the score in the background is not a wrong choice, we've had circumstances where it's like, this feels too dramatic for what we're talking about right now. And this music background feels dated, right? If you said that was a commercial from 1991, I wouldn't have been surprised. And that's a problem when you're talking about AI, right? Like, were they forced into this because it's in their other campaigns? I don't know, but like you touched on it and now I'm leaning in on it. It's borderline annoying.
It feels sleepy to me. I feel sleepy right now.
Well, we've got other reasons.
Okay, let's see if the next one can wake me up. So that one, it earned a resounding 61%. It needs more specific facts and figures, clearer demonstration, and a stronger offer. Like you said, another bit on this, we'll just pile on to IBM, is like, this is maybe not the best territory for this execution. The better bet might be a host-read ad where you could go longer and talk about it and explain it. And if you're going to do a shorter unit like this around this product, make something that's more distinct or interesting. So this is from the Dan Patrick Show, right? Would you be better served having him go a little bit longer talking about this, particularly in a segment that maybe even is adjacent to this same topic?
That's a great point, because what are we to expect from going to IBM/consulting, right? And if Dan could even indicate with authenticity, like, hey, maybe Dan doesn't know that much about AI, but he went to the website, right? And immediately gathered some tips on ways that it might be able to help. The Dan Patrick Show. It's pretty powerful, right? Because as a business owner myself, I'm not sure what to do next with AI, right? Isn't that the opportunity for IBM? And that's the goal of this, is to engage us enough to get us to go somewhere. And the ad's not delivering on that. And you're right. It's a new exploratory, like we talked about earlier, right? Where, hey, host reads can really drive people to something where you're having to educate them on what it is for the first time.
And there's so much talk about AI. It's like, how much better would it be to have Dan Patrick, even if it was a pre-recorded, go, hey, this is Dan Patrick. I know when it comes to this AI stuff, it's changing every day. It's hard to even know what's going on. But I do know IBM is somebody that's been in computing for a long time. And in fact, they've got this new AI product or consulting that they're taking me through on a special webinar because I've got questions. And you can sign up to join that with me by going to blah, 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 blah. give them the path. Like, now we're talking.
Right.
As opposed to the impression you and I just got. Again, I want to like give the teams credit that, you know, are working on this stuff. I can kind of feel it. It's like, okay, let's make something pleasant that doesn't disturb anyone, that at the right CPM, if nothing else, even the person's subconscious heard IBM AI consulting. But man, come on, that's setting the bar pretty low.
If the ROI is around engagement at IBM/consulting, I think we're both sitting here now going, wow, you give us a budget for host reads and you let them continue to run that at scale, probably at a more efficient CPM. I think Stu and I, if we were given a budget for host reads versus the efficiency of this standard sponsor read, and we, of course, probably had to pay a bit more premium for those, I think we can out-deliver on the ROI.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
I'd love to do it.
All right. That's our open invitation to the team over at IBM, Rhapsody Voices in Oxford Road. Join forces to do a bake-off against this current creative. Let it be known.
It's my job as a selling CEO to at least attempt that, and I will.
We're taking ad infinitum to a whole other level right now, Mike Jensen. I'm loving this. All right, we got one more. It's from Monday.com. Here we go.
You know, some people enjoy composing their own music, chord by chord, and others are happiest when they come across that one perfect song. Work is not a lot different than that. Whether you prefer building your own workflow or using a pre-made template, with Monday.com, you and the team can work in a way that's comfortable for everyone. Tap the banner to go to Monday.com and build your own amazing workflow, or find an awesome template. No judgment.
All right. Actually, we do want judgment right now. How do you judge this?
Okay, this is tough because I know obviously that work went into this, but I'm still confused after this ad of why Monday.com.
And this was from Going West, a true crime podcast. So you know.
Okay, I'm still confused, even if I was a Going West regular listener. And I think some of them are too.
This sort of smacks of the same thing as the other B2B one, which was IBM, of like, they're saying however they just said it. And it's okay that I'm forgetting it right now because it kind of illustrates a point about all of this with ad infinitums that I don't remember, and it's literally been 20 seconds. But I think they call it workflows.
It's a newer product or service. And that's where I feel like this confusion shouldn't be here. And yeah, you need to be selecting like the key points of distinction for the service.
I don't know who's out there shopping for workflows. Maybe there is a whole audience. It's just, anyway, I'm inserting myself in your judgment. Go ahead. Please judge. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give Monday.com? MeUndies was at 9, which we agree. Excellent. Rakuten was at 5. IBM, 6. Monday.com?
4.
Under Rakuten.
I felt like I understood the value proposition of Rakuten because it was concise in the copy of 3,500 different stores that I can get points back from. And I've just heard this ad one time. I've never heard that ad, I swear. Whereas Monday.com, I'm still struggling to know what or where to go.
Maybe Monday.com?
I'm worried about Rhapsody Voice's ability to capture Monday.com ad revenue right now.
This might be exactly what they need to hear. That's part of what's up with that infinitum to me. What I find is it's freeing to be critiquing a campaign that neither you or I are financially incentivized in any way. We can just look at it as professionals. It's refreshing because we can have more objectivity, and we're just like kind of doing it also as like listeners.
I think that it's probably important to mention that they have a heavier lift in selling like what you talked about, like workflow, right? So with that, are you tempted to go efficiency and generic, knowing that you have to reach a lot of people in order to get engagement for workflow? I don't necessarily agree with that strategy, but I can understand saying, hey, we're not going to just be able to run a niche business podcasts. So what if we go the other way? Because we won't reach enough people. What if we go the other way and just go highly generic and hope to capture across the overall, what is generally in the population, a higher household income, listening to podcasts and streaming audio engagement?
I don't know. What I think of with this is when it comes to B2B in particular is like, look, how much time does this save the team? Teams that use Monday.com save X amount of time because we all know it's work. Having to use the word workflow or projects or whatever, I may be missing something. I didn't see this brief. But to me, it's like, regardless of how you're doing the targeting, companies that switch to Monday.com, and maybe you know something about the size or whatever, save X amount of time. with tools like workflow.
I'm not trying to lean us a particular direction because I do believe in host and non-host reads. I do. But are there hosts that are having great experiences with this? Like if you had, I'll just give you a personal experience. This is not an advertiser of ours, but like I use Grammarly. I find it highly effective. When I'm writing an important note, there's something I miss and don't catch. I love throwing it in there so that I can just have the right capitalization, or there's tools within that product that save me time and give me confidence in important communication over email. I'd love to do a host read for Grammarly, right? I bet you there are many business owners or managers or what have you feel that way about Monday.com. And there may be creators that feel that way. And I just think that's the opportunity here.
Well, I know I can, because we use Monday.com. So I'll do it.
Okay.
I can say this.
I did not know that.
I run a creative team at Oxford Road. And we've, like everybody, I feel like I've tried organizing it with like spreadsheets, with Google Sheets. I remember we were on Basecamp. What I can say about Monday.com is this. One, I'm not a super project manager that uses all of the functionality. I know that once we switched to Monday.com, and it was probably longer ago than I realized, I want to say 3 years, but it might be more closer to like 5. Never switched out. I know my experience of it is it's simple, it's intuitive. Was there a couple like things to like kind of learn how to use with it? Yeah, but I know any interaction with other documents or software, like I know it's been frictionless, keeps my team organized, and that's how I run my team check-in every week is in Monday.com. So that's my endorsement, right? I don't know the name of a single one of their sub products or functionalities or any of that. I know it made our life easier in our creative department, and we've never left it.
Wow, the Oxford team really could do, with you specifically in the lead.
Go to monday.com/Oxford Road Creative Services, which the acronym is ORCS, which the fantasy part of my heart loves. At the end of the day here, what we have is MeUndies at 9 from Mike Jensen, 83% with Audiolytics. Then next would be IBM at a 6 from Mike Jensen, 61% with Audiolytics. A little bit of a flip-flop here. Rakuten at a 5 from Mike Jensen, 65 from Audiolytics. So a little inverse there with IBM and Rakuten, but they're in the same zone. And then actually the low score for both of us for Monday.com, 4 from Mike Jensen, 58% from Audiolytics. After listening to all these ads and talking to the chief audio officers out there, what advice do you have for them on how to make their audio ad dollars work harder?
I think when we listen to these ad reads, we go back to something we talked about earlier in the show, which is the authenticity, right? We had a couple of ad reads there where we thought the product or service was a great opportunity for people, but it needed a bit more education and it needed a bit more concise value proposition. And we felt like host reads and or better copy execution of the value should be executed. So I think it's that authenticity. It's a bit more of a laser focus on the copy. And that extended even into sort of like the background music and score and those that were not host-read. And then lastly, when there's any confusion of what the product or service will provide, whether it host or non-host, it has a negative impact on the messaging.
So authenticity, focus, and clarity.
Yep, you did a very good job of taking that word salad and making it something of value.
I focused on it.
A focused, yes.
This has been awesome. Mike, thank you for joining. Thanks for coming on Ad Infinitum, sharing your experience. Where can listeners go to learn more about you and connect?
Well, you can always go to the website, rhapsodyvoices.com, but you can reach me directly at Mike, M-I-K-E, at rhapsodyvoices.com. I'd love to hear from people, listeners, questions, and I'm here to be a resource for anybody. And I know that I learned from each of those conversations.
Just like this one today.
Thanks for doing this face-to-face, by the way.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad we did it face-to-face. And one last audio rule of third, something that comes well in threes is thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wow. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the show.
I'm glad you were here. It's hard to be hateful with a plate full of grateful. Isn't that right?
It is, and why not invite longtime Media Roundtable listener, which that I am.
Thank you for that. So for our CAOs that are listening, remember authenticity, focus, clarity, and when it comes to the copy, look for that personal tie-in with the host. Hosts are people too, like we've talked about. Keep it simple and make sure that you've got a clear call to action, that it's stated clearly and that it makes sense, right? You want it to be simple. So personal tie-in, simplicity, keep it simple, and have a clear call to action. And to all our listeners, remember, if you like what you heard today, show us some love with an honest 5-star review. And if there's an ad you can't get out of your head that you want us to dissect, let me know. It's stew@oxfordroad.com. That's STEW @oxfordroad.com. And until next time, remember to have fun making the ads work.